And we're live. Welcome into the Extra Point Show presented to you guys by Fantasy Points. My name is Nick Skrip. As always, I am here with my guy Major, and we are going to go through some underdog player prop bets to win you guys some cash. We have the show every single Sunday, so if this is the first time you guys are tuning in, how it works is Major and I go through some of our picks for you guys here and why we are selecting those, and hopefully through that we can win you some money. But Major, we're heading into week 3 here. NFL season's been interesting to say the least. Got some injuries, some big performances, some underperformers. How are you feeling about this week, man?
I kind of feel good about this week. I'm building up slowly. I think that first week I started off like 1-3. Last week I went 2-2. I could have easily went 3-1. Man, I called Allen Robinson to have 53 and a half receiving yards. He ended up with 53. So he killed me with half a yard. So we building up. So this week we'll go 4-0. Let's get it.
I saw on Thursday that a lot of people got burned by Chase Claypool because of the laterals they were doing
Right.
at the end of the game, and he hit like under his yardage. It's the most frustrating thing sometimes when you just hit like under that mark. I'd rather get like smoked by a bet. But
Exactly.
if you guys are not familiar, though, with Underdog, go check that out. You can go to underdogfantasy.com, or you can go to the App Store, type in Underdog Fantasy, and you can find the app from there. How it works, it's super simple. You'll see the NFL, which we'll be talking about today. They have other sports, but they'll give you a full list of players and a bunch of prop bets for those players. So different stats, and you select an over or under of at least 2 different players on 2 different teams. And then from there, you put in $5, $10, and can win some money. They have a deposit matchup if you use the promo code Fantasy Points, Fantasy PTS. So you put down $20, you can play with 40, etc. from there. So again, Major and I go through our picks every single week. We're just under 100%, I think, hit rate at this point here. But Major, what's the first bet you like for today?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna go with Mac Jones higher than 0.5 interceptions. McCorkle has been throwing picks per game. He has 1 per game the last 2 games, and the Ravens have a ball hawking defense, a secondary. They're tied with Arizona with 7 INTs this year. The secondary, they do give up a lot of yards, but they take that gamble. They go after those picks. So look for Marcus Williams, who have 3 interceptions, Marlon Humphreys, 1 interception. Look for them to get to the ball this week. So look for McCorkle, aka Mac Jones, to continue his interception streak.
Yeah, and another piece of news too, if you guys are setting your lineups or putting down some other bets on players on this team, Jacoby Myers not looking like he's going to play today, and that seems to be his go-to guy. He's a guy that gets pretty decent targets every week, so now you're taking a piece out of that offense. Other guys have to step up, and sometimes I feel like that elevates the chance that you make mistakes because you're kind of forcing passes into other players who may or may not step up in this game. But Mac Jones, like Major just said, back-to-back weeks with an interception. He also had a fumble in week 1. He's having a bit of a slow start. Do you think he's going to pick it up after this interception that he's going to throw this week for the rest of the year, or is this a year 2 slump for this guy? What do you think about that?
Nah, I think he's gonna be all right. And I think this may be the game to actually get him going. Like I said,
Yeah.
Baltimore has given up a lot of yards in the air, so he could have some nice numbers, but he can still throw a pick or 2.
Could be the case there. And I'm going to shift over to mine and go with Michael Pittman Jr. over 5.5 receptions. So Michael Pittman didn't play week 2, but in week 1, 9 catches on 13 targets with Matt Ryan. He hyper targeted his wide receiver 1. No other wide receiver that week had above 3 catches. So it was Michael Pittman Jr. getting 9, everybody else 3 or less for the wide receiver group. Greg Dortch had 7 catches versus the Chiefs in week 1. Mike Williams had 8 catches versus the Chiefs in week 2. The Colts have a tie against the Texans, and they have a loss against the Jaguars. So a nightmare of a start. Chiefs are 5th in total yards per game and 3rd in points per game. So the game script in this one, I think, is heavily going to favor the pass versus the run. I know we have Jonathan Taylor out there, but again, it's the Chiefs. A lot of teams have to throw against the Chiefs. So seeing the success of some other wide receivers against the Chiefs, along with him just being that alpha wide receiver in Indianapolis, I like that over 5.5 reception mark. What's your thoughts there, though?
Yeah, I like Michael Pittman, but Matt Ryan kind of scares me, man. I'm getting a lot of Ben Roethlisberger vibes going on here. Like, is he washed up? Is it just a slow start for him? I don't know, but I think he does hyper target, like you said, his wide receiver one, kind of like a Julio Jones type of feel going on there. But with him coming back, I think they're going to pepper him as much as possible to get him going. So I think Michael Pittman will be over that 5 or
Yeah,
6
Matt Ryan
receptions.
last week without Michael Pittman Jr. Not saying it was just because of him, and I'm not saying either that the Jaguars defense is good, but 53.3 for his completion percentage. He threw under 200 yards and he had 3 interceptions. So
Hmm,
I think a lot of us were pretty excited about Matt Ryan, maybe a new start, even though it's towards the end of his career, but he looked awful last week.
absolutely.
What's your second pick though of today's slate?
Let me see. For my second one here, I'm going with Russell Wilson, lower than 246 and a half passing yard or total yards. Last week versus the not so good Houston defense, Russell only cooked up 219 yards. It really hasn't looked good for the Denver offense. It seemed like they haven't really synced up yet, or I don't know. With Russell Wilson and those 2 receivers on that team, I'm pretty sure they should be way better than what they are right now. Um, and Denver will be facing the number 1 pass defense in the 49ers. They're only giving up 142 and a half yards per game. A lot of that does have to do with that first game against your Bears, that underwater bowl they had in week 1, but that defense is still pretty good. Um, yeah, and just I don't know what's going on with Russell, man. It just doesn't seem like it's clicking yet. So, hopefully he gets it together. But this week I'm just gonna say he's under.
It's interesting too for the fantasy world because obviously you're talking about the stats. It translates to fantasy. Russell Wilson QB 20 right now in the season for fantasy purposes, and it's only 2 weeks, so we don't want to go crazy and drop him in leagues. But I'm putting you on the spot though for fantasy. I know we're talking player props right now. Are you benching him this week, or are you still just rolling out with Russell Wilson, just knowing his history of success, but I don't know. What are your thoughts there, just for the fantasy world?
No, it's funny you asked me that because I actually have to roll him out in the Scott Fishbowl. So he's like, I picked him as my QB1. So I'm kind of upset at him now. I think that's why that's why I
Yeah,
went lower on this, because he's hurting my heart right now. But yeah, I think he'll be all right. His numbers at the end of the day always look a little bit better than what they are.
mhm.
Um, but if you watch the game, it's not looking good. So hopefully he can get it together. And also I went total yards because he hasn't been running that much either. So I think he has a total of maybe like less than 10 yards on the year so far. So he's not running the ball. So that total, you know, could that actually will affect his total yardage. So let's see how it goes. Again, I'm rooting for him because I have
Yeah.
him in the Scott Fishbowl, but I don't think it's there yet. I think it's gonna be a slow start for him.
And sometimes he can, hit that under on that specific stat, but have like a big touchdown day or something, and end up being
Exactly.
good for Scott Fishbowl and good for Major's bet there. But my second one, I'm going to roll with one of the rookies here, who I haven't been super high on him, just through the NFL draft and him as a prospect. I'm kind of caving a little bit just because of the opportunity, but I want to talk about Treylon Burks going over 41.5 receiving yards. So he's hit this mark in both weeks 1 and 2. He had 55 and 47 receiving yards. Things seem to be trending up for Burks. His snap percentage week 1 to week 2 nearly jumped by 10%. He had 6 targets last game. I think it's time for the Titans to, get the 18th overall pick going. It's the AJ Brown replacement
Mhm.
against the Raiders. Zach Ertz, Marquise Brown, and Greg Dortch all hit this mark in an overtime game last week. Week 1, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Carter, and Gerald Everett all hit this mark week 1 against the Raiders. So Treylon Burks, again, just seeing that he's already hit this both weeks, and things seem to be trending up. I think to get 42 receiving yards is pretty modest. So I'm going to go over that mark.
No, I'm with you on that. I think he is trending up, and it seems like the Titans are kind of loosening up the reins a little bit and letting Tannehill throw the ball a little bit more. You got a lot more play action now with Derrick Henry out there. So, you could get back to the play action and throwing it to, let's call him AJ Brown Light.
Yeah.
So, and he looked pretty good. I watched his game last week. He was out there looking good. So, look for him to have a good week.
And he's a guy too. Like I don't know how I don't know if they're using him like Arkansas did, but he's a guy that can take a screen pass for 15 yards, on a given play, if they kind of manufacture it. But both him and Robert Woods have yet to step up this season, and I think the Titans just in general need to get something through the air going because it hasn't looked great.
Absolutely, man. So
So
for
we're
my
up,
oh
yeah,
my bad.
up
Yeah,
to
for
number
my
three.
next one, I'm gonna go with Raheem Mostert, lower than 39.5 rushing yards. The Miami rushing offense has been off to a slow start with lead backs Mostert and Chase Edmonds totaling 125 yards. Like both running backs totaled 125 yards for the season so far. Um, and for Miami to win the game, I think they're going to have to lean on Tua and those receivers to counter Buffalo's like leading rushing defense with short passes and stuff like that. And then they're going to have to like trying to keep the Bills offense off the field. So yeah, I think there's the running game most likely going to kind of get scripted out of this game. I don't think it's really their fault. I just think Buffalo's run defense is so good, and then Miami's receivers are so good. So you can throw a quick screen or a hitch or something to kind of balance that running game. So look for Tua to have a pretty good game, but look to those running backs to struggle this week.
I mean, think about last week, Derrick Henry, 25 yards on the ground.
Yeah,
Hassan Haskins had 37. So I guess if you combine those two, it's like okay for yardage. But I'm 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 like really confused by how they've rolled out their running backs too in Miami because I really like Chase Edmonds this year and thought he would lead the team in touches. I still think he will. But last week, Raheem Mostert, 55% of the snaps and had 11 carries. Super efficient with those 11 carries. But I'm with you. I think Buffalo's defense, man, they're not giving up a ton on the ground, and you're seeing these guys have bad days. I'm trying to see what the Rams did. Henderson, 47 yards, but I mean, it's not going to be part of the game plan. I don't think they're going into this one saying, we're going to beat Buffalo, maybe the best team in football, with Raheem Mostert today.
right. And like I said, I think it's going to be kind of scripted out just because when coaches see that they're struggling in a running game, the way to combat that is by short passing. And that makes up for the running game. So, we'll see what happens. But, with Chase too, I think he's looking more like a third down back now. So it's kind of weird. I want to see what happens in that backfield because I think if for Miami to do anything, they're going to need a running game.
So Chase Edmonds, just real quick, 10.5 and 5.1 fantasy points. Do you think he's a good play this week because of what you're saying with the short passes, or you think it's going to be just overly targeting their two studs and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, and I guess I misspoke on that. With the two receivers, you got those to help out that running game, but then you also have Mostert coming out. I'm not Mostert. You have Edmonds coming out catching, little swing passes and stuff like that. So I think he'll
Yeah.
have a good receiving game. Um, but I think they both will still struggle. Buffalo's defense, man, they're like playoff ready. Like their passing defense and rushing defense ranked like in the top 3 on both of them. So you're not going to really move too much. So that's why I went with Miami's receivers because that's like you have to
Yeah.
lean into your best asset.
Yep. Yep. And just the Bills, 72 total points so far this season, scored, given up 17 total. So they're looking like a potential Super Bowl champion team right now for sure.
Absolutely.
My third one here, I'll pick an under. I'm going to take Alexander Madison under 21.5 rushing yards, which could be risky sometimes because sometimes we'll see the backup come in and rush the ball like once for 18 yards or something just
Right.
because it's a change of pace back. But he did hit this in week 1 with 36 in a 23-7 win over the Packers. So, a game that they were winning and were able to run the clock out a little bit. But last week in the big loss to the Eagles, he rushed for 8 yards. He only had 2 total carries. This to me is more normal for Madison because Dalvin Cook, he currently has a 69.8 snap percentage. That's number 7 for running backs. Last year, he was at 70.5, number 4 for running back. So he's very much a workhorse running back. And I know it's a different coaching staff, but we're seeing the same Dalvin Cook usage, who I think is going to have a good game today. But last year, Madison only hit 22 yards, which is the mark here, 5 times. In 4 of those 5 times, it was because Dalvin Cook didn't play. Dalvin Cook is playing today. So I don't like Madison to hit those yardages because he's really not getting the work. And we didn't see it really much last year when Cook was healthy.
Man, that's risky. Like 20 yards sound like you can trip and fall for 20 yards. Like, but like you said, if he's not getting those snaps, most likely it's not gonna happen. You know what? I'm gonna push back on that. I'm gonna go over, man. Like 20 yards, like we gotta be able to get 20. What was it? 20?
21.5, so 22 is the mark.
Man, 22 yards sounds so low. I mean, I hope you hit that one because that would be a nice call. But I'm gonna go over, man. He's the type of player too who can take, like you said, he can take he can bust off an 18-yard run just off of one carry. So I'm rooting for the kid to get more than 22 yards. Like, come on, you gotta be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's a risky one. If it hits, I'll be doing like the McGregor walk, like I knew all along. And if it doesn't hit, then I'll
doing an
say,
AB.
yeah. That's all of them. I got a couple in the bag that I'm just like ready to pull out at any time here. But I actually think that's going to be a good game. One of my last picks has to do with that specific game. NFC North, everybody is 1-1 right now, so that'll be an interesting game. But what's your final pick here of today's slate?
Yeah, so my last one, man, let's run one back from last week, man. Let's go with Allen Robinson, higher than 49.5 receiving yards. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, he killed me with half a yard last week, so he's going to make up for it. Like, he's a good guy. He's going to help me out. But like I mentioned, we lost like half a yard. Arizona defense is second to last, giving up 300 plus receiving yards per game. So the ball's going to be going all over the field. Cooper Kupp is going to eat. You're going to have to double him. So that's going to leave Allen Robinson 101 with whomever they have over there. It doesn't really matter at this point. So I think Allen Robinson is going to have a big game. He's building up slowly, so each game he's getting a little bit better on the receiving yards. And I think this week he could have that breakout game we've all been waiting for, that 100-yard reception game.
Yeah, it looked a lot better week 2 compared to week 1. And Sean McVay came out and said, like, hey, we got to get this guy going. And typically when a coach says it, you kind of got to be on the fence because it can be just coach speak. Or, with a guy like McVay, I kind of trust what he says for a majority of the time because I think he's pretty true to his players and it shows, with their game plans sometimes. So week 1, 12 yards, week 2, 53 yards, had that touchdown last week. Much better of a game. He's out there the whole time too. So it's not like he's on and off the field. He's running all the routes and he's on the field damn near close to 100% of the time. So I'm with you on that. And I think should be a decent game against Arizona too. So it's a big one for them. So I can see Robinson's breakout finally being there. But my last one here is back to that Detroit Minnesota game. I got Jared Goff over 253.5 passing yards. So Jalen Hurts against the Minnesota Vikings last week. Not comparing Jared Goff to Jalen Hurts.
I was about to say.
Very similar quarterbacks. No. Jalen Hurts threw for 333 yards in week 2. Aaron Rodgers week 1 struggled against the Vikings. I think might have been more of a team and him sort of thing, though, versus like the defense just eating him up. But seeing Hurts last week, he had a good game. Goff has had 34 and 37 passing attempts the last 2 games. So he's throwing the ball at a decent rate. He just hit this mark against Washington for 256 yards. So I think the passing script of the game is going to be there. It's 2 NFC North teams, like I said before, that are 1-1. That division is up for grabs right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown alone had 116 receiving yards last week. Chark, Hockenson, Swift are all guys that can give him a little bit of a boost too. So I feel like it's kind of a high mark, you might say, for Jared Goff, but I feel like in this game against the Vikings, it just makes sense that he's going to continue to pass the ball at the rate he has in week 1 and week 2.
Yeah, like you said, he has a good amount of attempts to capitalize on that. And like St. Brown is the truth, man. I kind of like to hold out on rookie receivers for the first couple years, but it seems like he's the man out there. And I think DJ Chark is gonna have a bounce back week. Last week he didn't really do anything at all. Um, yeah, he had 4 targets, 0 receptions. So look for
Yeah.
Chark to get involved. And like you said, Swift, another guy who can take a 0 play and turn it into a touchdown. You could throw him a swing pass and it could end up being a 60-yard play. So he has the athletes around him. I think he has a coaching staff who kind of like believes in him. I don't think Goff ever has had the the coaches believe in his passing ability.
Yeah.
So it seemed like they always kind of had him on a script or had him on a pitch count. But it looks like he, what he had like what's his yeah, so the first game he had 37 attempts, second game he had 34 attempts. So, he's throwing the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. With Monroe St. Brown, just on a side note, absolutely killing it already. I think he tied a Lions receiving record, if I'm not mistaken, for a streak of 8 catches in a row. Were you a guy going into the season? Were you in on him, out on him, somewhere in the middle? Because for me personally, I know this doesn't relate to the prop bet, but we're on the subject of the Lions. But for me personally, I've pivoted a lot to Amon-Ra St. Brown just because us as guys that talk football, you have to do that. It's normal to do that with more information. But how are you going into the season?
I was always a St. Brown fan. I'm a USC guy, so that's like my college. I love them dudes, man.
Yeah.
So anybody from USC, I'm all in on. And only thing that was holding me back was like Goff being a quarterback and knowing that, they usually keep him on a pitch count. But like I said, they're letting Goff cook, I guess. So and St. Brown is probably the reason they're doing that. So again, and I mean his size, I didn't think he'll be a true number one. I thought he'll be more like a wide receiver too, but nah, that dude's he's the man out there.
Looks like the truth for sure. So, real quick, guys, too, I'm just looking on the Underdog Fantasy app. They have some other competitions that you can actually put money on as well. So we were talking about the pick'em options. They have drafts that you can be a part of too. They have the Battle Royale, which is a slate for week 3. It's $5. There's $250,000 in prizes for that. So basically, you get in a room with I think like 10 or 12 guys, and it's a draft. It's like a 30-second clock draft, and you pick like a DraftKings sort of thing where you pick your slate, and again, you can win some major prizes here. I think first place is $50,000, so it's a $5 deposit, and it's fun to go and draft. They have another one, Goal Line Stand, which is on the app as well, a little bit more expensive, $25 entry. So a lot of prizes with that too. So that's what I like about the Underdog app. You can do the player props. You can also pivot and do the drafts there. A lot of money there. So if you are not familiar, go check it out. Use the promo code for a deposit matchup. Fantasy Points, Fantasy PTS. Major, anything for us as we close out this show heading into week 3?
Quick, I got one more for you. Like, I want your opinion on this. What's Miko Hardman under over 39.5 receiving yards?
Miko Hardman over under 39.5 receiving yards. I got to pull up Hardman just to see a couple things here. I mean, he's on the field right over 50% of the time.
Right.
The first week he had 6 targets, didn't do much with him. Second week he had 49 yards, so that was, hitting that mark. I think he's a guy that probably can take 2 catches for that just because it's a Patrick Mahomes offense.
Right.
I stay away from him though, because I feel like any day now we're going to see Sky Moore get more, involved in the offense, and MVS is actually on the field more than Hardman. And I'm not a big MVS fan in all honesty, but are you on the overside or the underside of that one?
I don't know. I'm like right down the middle, man. I like Miko. I pull for him like every week. I have him on a lot of my fantasy squads. So I'm waiting for him to break out. I thought he was going to take advantage of Tyreek Hill being, traded or whatnot. Being that he's the veteran receiver in that wide receiver room, but it seems like it hasn't really transferred yet. But I don't know. I got a feeling he'll be on that oversight. I think he was dealing with an injury or something week 1 or something. So I think that's why his timeshare is off a little bit. But I don't know. That's a weird one. Like Miko's always down the middle with me. He can go either way at any time.
Yeah, the news broke 2 days ago on the sleeper app saying that he would play in week 3, and the injury was a heel. So I don't know what was going on with that, but not at least not like a hammy or something like that where he's going to pull up or not be able to explode enough. But don't follow Edwin from Fantasy Points for that stuff. I can't speak on the injury stuff.
There you go.
Well, thank you guys, for tuning into this show again. Every single week, we are here for about a half hour talking some player prop bets, winning you guys some money. And we're gearing up for this week of football. So good luck in your guys' fantasy matchups and your player prop bets this week.
Peace.